She told me I was crossing a line, but the truth was, neither of us wanted that line to exist anymore. I never planned to notice her the way I did. She wasn't just my boss, she was the kind of woman people fell silent around when she entered a room. 42, maybe 43, though age seemed irrelevant when it came to her. She carried herself with the kind of confidence that couldn't be rehearsed, measured steps, poised shoulders, a glance that made you feel seen and judged in the same heartbeat. She had a way of dressing that was effortless but precise, tailored suits, soft blouses, and heels that clicked with authority against the polished floor of the office. But it wasn't her clothes that held my attention, it was the contrast she embodied. Graceful but sharp. Warm but untouchable. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I found myself looking for the small cracks in her armor, the moments when the human side slipped through the polished exterior. I noticed them in the little things. The way she pressed her lips together when she was thinking too hard. The quiet sigh she let out when she thought no one was listening. The fleeting softness in her voice when she asked if I'd eaten during late nights at work. Those details stayed with me far longer than they should have. It started one evening when the office was nearly empty. The hum of the air conditioning filled the silence, the windows darkened by the city lights outside. I was bent over a stack of reports, and she leaned down beside me to point out an error. The faint scent of her perfume, something floral, understated, hit me first. Then the warmth of her hand brushed against my shoulder as she steadied herself. It lasted only a second, but it left me frozen, my skin burning where she touched. She pulled away quickly, as if nothing had happened, her voice calm and professional. But I caught the smallest pause before she spoke again, the flicker of awareness in her eyes. It was gone almost instantly, buried under her usual control, but I knew I hadn't imagined it. From then on, everything felt different. Every time she passed me a file, I noticed how her fingers lingered just a fraction longer than necessary. Every time her gaze drifted across the office and landed on me, I wondered if she looked too long. And maybe it was all in my head, but the silence between us wasn't just silence anymore. It was charged, heavy, waiting. I tried to remind myself of the facts. She was my boss. She had years of experience, authority, and a life that had nothing to do with me outside those walls. I was 25, still figuring out who I was, still learning where I fit in the world. By every standard, there was a line, clear, unshakable, professional. And yet, I couldn't ignore the pull. It wasn't just attraction, it was curiosity. Who was she when she wasn't holding the office together? Who was she when she let herself breathe? That question kept me restless, kept me glancing at her when I shouldn't, kept me listening for the quiet moments when her guard slipped. That night, when the office finally emptied and only the two of us remained, I caught her sitting at her desk, shoulders slumped for the first time all day. She rubbed her temple, eyes closed, unaware I was watching. In that small moment, she wasn't my boss. She wasn't the woman everyone else saw, untouchable, perfect, beyond reach. She was just human. And I knew right then, the line between us wasn't just professional. It was emotional. Fragile. And maybe, just maybe, it was already beginning to blur. She said it one evening when the tension finally broke through the silence between us. "You're crossing a line." Her voice was calm, even. Not raised, not angry, just controlled, deliberate, the kind of tone she used when she wanted to remind someone who was in charge. But underneath that calm, I caught something else. Something she didn't mean for me to hear. Hesitation. We were standing by her desk, papers spread across it like a shield between us. She had leaned closer to explain a section of the report, her hair falling forward, the light catching in it. For a moment, she forgot to pull back. And maybe I forgot too, because I didn't move away. That's when she said it. I should have apologized, stepped back, put the distance she wanted between us. But instead I heard myself say, "Then draw it closer." The words came out low, steady, more confident than I felt. And in the second that followed, I saw something flicker in her expression, surprise, maybe, or the faintest trace of a smile. She quickly fought back. Her lips pressed together tightly, and she looked down at the papers as if they could anchor her. Her hand gripped a pen a little too firmly, the soft click of the cap breaking the silence. She tried to speak again, but her words came slower this time, measured, as if she was deciding how much to let me see. "You shouldn't say things like that," she murmured, not meeting my eyes. "Why not?" I asked gently. I didn't push, but I didn't retreat either. Finally, she looked up, and the weight of her gaze landed on me like gravity itself. Her eyes were sharp, assessing, but there was something behind them she couldn't quite hide. Vulnerability. Curiosity. A flicker of the same pull I had been fighting. For a long moment, we didn't move. Just stood there in that quiet office, surrounded by paperwork, monitors humming in the background, the city outside alive but distant. The air between us was charged in a way words couldn't explain. I noticed the small details because I couldn't help it. The way her fingers trembled just slightly when she set the pen down. The way her chest rose and fell, steady but a little too deep. The way she tilted her head, almost as if she were daring me to say something else. But I didn't. Not this time. I let the silence speak for me. Her authority was her armor, and I had just tapped against it. Not hard enough to break it, but enough for her to feel the pressure. She recovered quickly, straightening her shoulders, adjusting her blouse as though pulling her composure back into place. "We have work to do," she said finally, her voice firmer now, dismissing me with words but not with her eyes. I nodded, but inside I knew something had shifted. A line had been acknowledged, spoken aloud, and yet, instead of closing it off, my words had drawn it into question. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of half-finished sentences and silence heavy with unspoken thoughts. She kept her distance, but I could feel her awareness, like heat radiating across the room. Every time I glanced up, I caught her doing the same, quick looks, stolen moments, eyes that darted away the second I noticed. She had set a boundary. I had challenged it. And now, the line between us wasn't just professional, it was personal. Fragile. Dangerous. And I couldn't help wondering if she really wanted me to stay behind it. After that night, nothing between us was the same. She never mentioned my words again, never acknowledged that I had dared to challenge the line she drew. But silence has a way of speaking, and in that silence, I heard everything. Our days fell into a rhythm. Meetings, deadlines, reports, the same grind as always. But beneath it all was something unspoken, a quiet thread pulling us closer no matter how hard she tried to resist. It was in the way her eyes lingered a second too long when she passed me in the hallway. The way her voice softened when she asked for something simple. "Can you bring me that file?" Or, "Stay a little longer, will you?" Words that sounded professional to anyone else but carried a different weight when directed at me. The evenings were the hardest. Most people left the office at 6, but not her. She stayed late, and more often than not, so did I. Sometimes we worked in silence, the only sounds the tapping of keyboards and the low hum of the city through the glass windows. Other times, we shared small pieces of ourselves without meaning to, quiet conversations about books, music, or little fragments of memory. It wasn't flirtation, not exactly. It was something subtler. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was nervous. The way her shoulders relaxed when I made her laugh. The way her chair seemed to inch just a little closer to mine as the night wore on, as though proximity made the work easier. And I noticed everything. I noticed the faint lines of tiredness around her eyes when she thought no one was watching. I noticed how her hand brushed against mine when we passed documents back and forth, not every time, but often enough to wonder if it was still an accident. I noticed how she sighed, not the sharp exhale of stress, but the quiet kind, like someone letting go for just a moment. Sometimes, when the office was so quiet it felt like the world outside had vanished, I caught her looking at me. Not with authority, not with distance, but with something softer. As soon as our eyes met, she'd look away, focus back on her papers as if nothing happened. But I knew. I felt it. There was one night in particular, late, the rain tapping against the windows, the smell of coffee still fresh between us. She leaned over my desk to glance at the numbers on a spreadsheet, her sleeve brushing against mine. I froze, the warmth of her body so close it blurred the rest of the room. She didn't move away immediately. Instead, she paused, her breath just barely brushing my shoulder. Time stretched in that silence. My heart pounded, but I forced myself to stay still, not to ruin the fragile balance. And then, just when it felt like something might break, she cleared her throat and straightened, creating space again. Neither of us mentioned it. But both of us felt it. The truth was, we didn't need words. The silence between us had become its own kind of language. Every glance, every accidental touch, every pause in conversation carried meaning. A meaning we didn't dare say aloud, but one that grew heavier with each passing day. She had told me once that I was crossing a line. But now, I wondered if she realized, she was crossing it too. The night it happened, the office was unusually still. Even the city outside seemed muted, the usual noise of traffic softened by distance and glass. We had been there for hours, hunched over deadlines that blurred together, but the truth was, neither of us had left because of work. I noticed her first, not as my boss, not as the figure of authority everyone respected, but as a woman who looked tired. Not the surface-level tiredness of long hours, but the deeper kind. The kind you carry when you've been holding yourself together for too long. She sat back in her chair, eyes closed, one hand pressed against her temple. I hesitated, unsure if I should say anything. Then, almost without realizing it, I asked softly, "Are you okay?" Her eyes opened slowly. For a second, I thought she would brush me off with her usual calm answer, something polished and professional. But instead, she exhaled, long and heavy, and the sound of it filled the empty room. "It's exhausting," she admitted. Her voice was low, almost fragile. "Being the one everyone relies on. Being strong all the time. Some days I wonder if anyone even sees me, outside of what I do." Her words caught me off guard. It wasn't a speech, not rehearsed. It was raw, unguarded, something she probably hadn't intended to say out loud. And the truth was, I had never heard her sound more human. I didn't rush to answer. I just let her words settle, let the weight of them hang between us. Finally, I leaned forward, my tone quiet but steady. "I see you." Her gaze flicked up to mine, sharp at first, like she was checking if I meant it. And when she saw that I did, something shifted. Her shoulders slumped, her eyes softened, and for the first time, she didn't look untouchable. She just looked real. I don't know what gave me the courage, but my hand moved across the desk, slow, deliberate. I rested it gently on top of hers. No sudden movement, no pressure, just enough to let her know I was there. At first, her hand was cool beneath mine, almost tense. But after a moment I felt her relax. Her fingers didn't pull away. Instead, they stayed still, then slowly curved, just slightly, as if acknowledging the contact. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "You shouldn't, I know," I said softly. "But I want to." She didn't answer right away. Her eyes searched mine, looking for something, hesitation, insincerity, maybe weakness. But when she didn't find it, she exhaled again, a quieter breath this time. The silence wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was intimate. Like a secret shared between just the two of us. Her hand remained under mine, steady now, no longer resisting. Her eyes lingered on me longer than they ever had before, studying me in a way that made my chest ache. For the first time, the distance between us didn't feel like authority or rules, it felt like choice. And in that choice, she didn't pull away. The moment ended eventually, of course. She straightened, cleared her throat, and gently slid her hand out from under mine, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The polished mask slipped back into place, but I had seen behind it now. And once you've seen someone like that, unguarded, vulnerable, you can never look at them the same way again. She had cracks in her armor. Beautiful, human cracks. And for the first time, I knew she trusted me enough to let me glimpse them. The rain started just as the office emptied, a steady rhythm against the tall windows, soft and relentless. The city lights blurred through the streaks of water, painting the room in shades of silver and gold. By the time the last of the staff had left, it was just the two of us again, our desks glowing faintly under the warm hum of the lamps, the rest of the office swallowed by shadow. We worked in silence, but it wasn't the silence of focus. It was thicker, heavier, charged with the memory of her hand under mine the night before. Every small sound, the scratch of her pen, the shift of her chair, the faint sigh she let out, pulled me closer to the surface of something neither of us wanted to name. At some point, I realized the papers in front of me had blurred. My focus wasn't on the numbers. It was on her, on the way her hair fell across her face as she leaned forward, on the soft crease between her brows as she read, on the quiet grace of her presence. She must have felt my gaze, because she looked up suddenly. Our eyes locked across the distance, and for a long, unbroken moment either of us looked away. It should have ended there. She should have cleared her throat, reminded me of the task at hand, restored the barrier we both knew existed. But instead, she spoke softly, almost hesitantly. "You're staring." I smiled faintly, not apologizing. "I can't help it." Her lips parted, as though she wanted to respond, but no words came. Instead, she looked back down at her papers, though her hand trembled slightly as she turned the page. Eventually, she stood and moved toward my desk, holding a folder. Her steps were quiet, her heels softened by the carpet, but each one felt impossibly loud in my chest. She placed the folder in front of me, her hand brushing against mine as she did. The touch lingered, too long to be an accident. She didn't move away. Instead, she leaned down, her shoulder brushing mine as her eyes scanned the paper I had been pretending to read. Her perfume, subtle, floral, wrapped around me, pulling me into a closeness I wasn't sure I could handle. I could feel her breathing now, steady but deep, each rise and fall of her chest brushing faintly against my arm. The sound of the rain grew louder, drowning out the world until it felt like there was nothing outside this moment, this space, this fragile balance we were teetering on. I turned my head slightly. She was so close that her hair brushed my cheek, soft and warm. For a heartbeat, either of us moved. The space between us shrank until it wasn't even space anymore, it was possibility. Her lips parted, her eyes flicked up to mine, and in that instant, I thought she might close the distance. I could feel the pull, like gravity, undeniable and strong. My heart was hammering, my breath caught in my throat, waiting, and then she whispered, so softly I almost missed it. "We can't." Her voice trembled, not with anger, but with conflict. With longing. With restraint. She pulled back, only slightly, but enough to put air between us again. Enough to remind us both of the line that still stood, fragile though it was. I didn't argue. I didn't reach for her. I just nodded, my voice steady though my chest ached. "I know." She lingered there for another moment, her eyes searching mine, as if waiting for me to challenge her again. But I didn't. I let her keep the boundaries she needed, even if every part of me wanted to cross it. The rain kept falling outside, steady and unrelenting. Inside, the storm was quieter, but no less real. We had almost crossed the line. Almost. And sometimes the almost hurts more than the distance itself. After that night in the rain, the distance between us felt sharper. She was careful the next day, almost too careful. Her words clipped, her instructions brief, her tone polished into something colder than usual. To anyone else, she was simply being professional. To me, it was different. I could feel the tension underneath, the kind that comes when two people pretend nothing has happened, though both know everything has changed. For a few days, I let her keep the space she wanted. I worked, I nodded, I followed her lead. But the silence between us had grown too heavy to ignore. It wasn't just attraction anymore. It was the ache of honesty unsaid. One evening, as the office emptied out, I decided I couldn't keep it inside any longer. She was at her desk, papers spread out before her, glasses perched low on her nose. The lamplight caught the edge of her profile, and I thought to myself how unfair it was that someone could be both so strong and so untouchably beautiful, and still so impossibly distant. I stepped closer. "Can we talk?" Her head lifted slowly. She must have heard something different in my voice, because her eyes softened, just slightly, though she tried to cover it with her usual calm. "About what?" she asked. "About us," I said. The word hung in the air like a weight. She froze, lips parting as though to deny it, but then she let out a quiet sigh, setting her pen down. She folded her hands in front of her and looked at me, no longer the boss addressing her employee, but a woman bracing herself for something she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. I swallowed, choosing each word carefully. "I don't see you as my boss anymore." "Not really. I see you as the woman who stays late because she doesn't want to go home to silence. I see you as the person who notices when I haven't eaten, who laughs at things she pretends aren't funny. I see you for you. And I don't want to pretend I don't anymore." Her eyes glistened in the lamplight, though her face remained steady. She shook her head faintly, her voice quiet. "You don't understand what you're saying." "I do," I said firmly. "I know what it means. I know what people would say, what it could cost you. But none of that changes the fact that this," I gestured between us, the space alive with tension, "is real." Her composure cracked then, just slightly. She leaned back in her chair, looking away as if she couldn't stand the weight of my gaze. "Do you know how dangerous this is for me?" she asked, her voice trembling now. "My position. My reputation. And then there's the age difference. You're young. You still have a whole life ahead of you. What happens when you regret this? When you wake up one day and realize you wanted something else?" I shook my head, stepping closer, lowering my voice. "You think age makes you harder to love? It doesn't. If anything, it makes you impossible not to. And if you're afraid of me regretting this one day, don't be. Because what I'd regret most is never telling you how I feel." Silence stretched between us, thick and fragile. She looked at me then, really looked, as if searching for the boy she feared I still was. But she didn't find him. She found the man standing in front of her, steady, unflinching. Her lips parted, her breath caught, but no words came. And in that silence I reached for her hand, not boldly, not to claim, but gently, like a promise. My fingers hovered, waiting for her to decide. She didn't pull away. Her hand trembled when it met mine, but it stayed. And in that simple touch I knew, the choice wasn't made yet, not fully. But something had shifted. She wasn't saying no. She was still afraid, but she was afraid while holding on to me. And that, in itself, was enough to keep me waiting. The choice didn't happen all at once. It wasn't a single moment of clarity, but a series of silences, stolen glances, and the quiet weight of hands that lingered too long to be mistaken for accidental. We didn't cross the line in a rush. We stepped toward it slowly, almost cautiously, as if both of us knew that once we did, there would be no turning back. For days after our conversation, she kept her distance. Her words were polite, her tone careful, her presence controlled. But her eyes betrayed her. Every time they found mine across the office, they lingered a heartbeat too long. Every time she brushed past me, her arm close enough to graze, I felt the tremor of hesitation in her movements. It was late on a Thursday when the silence finally broke. The office was empty, the world outside softened by another night of rain. She stood at her desk, gathering her things, when she stopped suddenly. Her hand rested on the back of her chair, her shoulders tense, as though she was fighting a battle inside herself. I didn't say anything. I just waited. Finally, she turned toward me. Her expression was unreadable at first, somewhere between resolve and fear. She took a slow step forward, then another, until she was close enough that I could see the faint glimmer of uncertainty in her eyes. "You make this harder than it should be," she whispered. "Or easier," I replied gently. Her lips parted, and for a moment I thought she would pull back again. Instead, she reached out, her hand trembling slightly as it found mine. She didn't hold it like someone testing the waters. She held it like someone who had already made a decision, but was only just finding the courage to admit it. Her fingers intertwined with mine, soft yet certain. The touch was small, but it carried the weight of everything we hadn't said. I felt the warmth of her palm against mine, the delicate press of her thumb brushing slowly over my skin. My chest tightened, my breath caught, and for the first time, the line between us didn't feel like a barrier. It felt like something we had chosen to step across, together. She exhaled, the sound trembling as if 1,000 unsaid words were released in that single breath. Then, in the quietest voice, she said, "Then maybe I'll draw it closer." The words struck deeper than any confession could have. They weren't bold, they weren't reckless, they were honest. Honest in their fear, in their longing, in their surrender. I lifted her hand gently, pressing it to my chest so she could feel the steady rhythm of my heartbeat. "No matter what comes," I told her, my voice steady, "I'll be here." Her eyes shimmered under the soft lamplight, and for once, she didn't look away. She studied me, as if weighing the promise in my words against the risks she had carried for so long. And then, slowly, she stepped closer, closing the last of the distance between us. She rested her head against my shoulder, not dramatic, not rushed, but with the quiet certainty of someone finally allowing herself to let go. I wrapped my arm around her, holding her carefully, reverently, as though the moment might shatter if I moved too quickly. We stayed like that for a long time, listening to the rain, feeling the warmth of each other's presence. There were no declarations, no grand gestures, no need for them. The choice had been made, not loudly, not with fireworks, but with the quiet intertwining of hands and the unspoken vow of two people willing to risk the unknown. Together but uncertain. That was enough. Because sometimes love doesn't begin with certainty. It begins with a single step closer. 15L